Japan as a society favors harmony over personal expression, conformity over individualization. While this collective decision as a nation allows for greater social stability, the consequence is the ones who fail to fit the mold face scrutiny and exclusion. So the pressure builds. In fear of standing out and causing disruption and being demonized, one must adopt the persona of a perfect member of society. The cracks one would expect to see on the surface are masked beneath pleasant smiles and rigid routine. Paranoia manifests itself not in an open outburst, but in quiet, internalized tension. The shame of this discourse leads to unspoken fears becoming monsters in the closet, passed around as rumors, scapegoats, and urban legends. Real yet not. Mass hysteria waits beneath the surface of Paranoia Agent's story. Beneath this society, vulnerable to its grasp, the people of Musashino City grow more manic with each passing moment, and the tale of shonen bad becomes their confession. In a society that values order above all, the most dangerous chaos is the one no one admits exists. Japan is known for its mentally exhausting work culture that piles on top of their society's already demanding expectations. As the cherry on top, capitalism demands constant growth, forcing workers to not only create bigger and grander products, but create it within small time windows. Creativity can't be mass-produced like crops, cars, or cans. Businesses that exist in the entertainment industry must rely on minds like Tsukiko to make their next hit. Yet ironically, they don't treat her with admiration or respect. They demand her to deliver something that will surpass her last creation, Madomi, by the end of the weekend. Tsukiko never asked to become a big-shot designer. It was a fate forced upon her. Once Madomi became so loved, he was stitched into the very nation's psyche like a security blanket. The expectation and pressure are too much of a burden for such a reserved, introverted individual. Her personality doubles as a target for coworkers who look down upon her, envious of her yet also frustrated with her lagging performance. They speak in hushed voices about their detest for her. Her boss the only one who hides his feelings beneath the smile, pressing in a very manufactured yet polite way for Tsukiko to create the magic again on the next mascot. It seems the company isn't interested in what exactly is wrong with her that causes her creative block. They just want what's next. But the magic wasn't something Tsukiko knows how to summon, so as the walls close in around her, she begins to suffocate under the pressure. In Japanese society, a crumbling mental health isn't a sufficient excuse for not delivering at work. They still struggle to pay heed to how important your mental wellness is in performance. Thus, they undermine and expect everyone to maintain the surface level harmony, regardless of if your mind is crumbling beneath your persona. You will be scorned, thought lesser of, as your inability to handle the pressure breaks the harmony the people of society are so conscientious of. And Tsukiko wants anything but to be the reason for that discord. Cornered by society with nowhere left to go, no socially acceptable outlet for her inner collapse, she imagines an excuse that will make her a victim, that will give her reason enough to be late on the deadline, to fail to meet expectations. An attacker on golden inlines with a bent metal bat comes to her rescue not as a villain, but as a savior. The myth of the assailant shown in bat becomes her subconscious cry for escape. The mysterious figure of the night attack is deemed to be a young lad. Not much is known about him besides that, but the collective consciousness of society makes quick work of spinning a larger narrative around this figure, attaching more characteristics to its persona. A hat with 3 buttons, a pair of blue shorts, a crooked smile plastered on his face as he attacks. The media makes quick work of grabbing the story and spinning the narrative to reinforce the idea that they as a society should uphold the social norm and values, warning that this is an example of the younger generation deviating from the end-all be-all, public harmony. While US media is driven by sensationalism and polarization, Japan media approaches stories as a way to preserve public order and morality. Their news speaks more about what the story means for society rather than focusing on the individual involved. Shonen Bat becomes a vessel for the message they wish to project. The younger generation is in social decline, and we as the adults must ensure this does not continue. The irony is, while they want to believe that the adult society is a perfectly functioning machine, the system is becoming more and more unstable as time goes on. They may want to believe because they are older, they are wiser, but that's just faulty logic. Age does not equal wisdom. For decades, their society has transformed, and those rapid changes make way for people to be left behind, fail to fit in, to reject their social structure entirely. Chief Keiichi is one who feels abandoned, a representation of an older Japan, far more stoic, duty-bound, and committed to structure and rules. His commitment becomes a strength and weakness that we will explore much later, but his entrance in the story provides us a healthy amount of skepticism around the assailant society calls Shonen Bad. Is he a fraud created by one girl? He'd seen it a decade prior, a little girl who made up an attacker to divert responsibility and play victim. Could it be possible that this is a repeat case? This line of thinking, while it was slowly becoming favored over believing Tsukiko's story, is buried for the time being as the journalist Akio is attacked by Shonen Bad after being cornered by society. A vulture attempting to siphon Tsukiko's story so he could sell it for a good price, pressuring and chasing her in desperation, became her second victim. Income is no longer his biggest concern. His head wound proves Shonen Bat is indeed real. Yuichi is known around the school as the best of them. He represents everything anyone wants to be. Good at sports, good grades, good looks. But the byproduct of this social fame is arrogance and an inflated ego, which makes his fall from grace something he cannot accept. It just so happens Yuichi wears a hat, shorts, and inline skates to school. Taking note of this, an unknown source begins the rumor Yuichi's the Shonen Bat. There's no proof, no evidence to back this. Just elementary hearsay taken at face value to be true. Yuichi becomes scorned by the same people who used to idolize his every movement. Wrapped in confusion and fear as he falls from atop his hill, he directs his paranoia towards his chosen scapegoat for his situation, his classmate, Shogo Ushiyama. It's ironic he has no base for his suspicion, just as there was no base for the rumors spread about him, but his delusions create a plausible narrative to convict Shogo of guilt. He's running in the class president race against him. Given he's fat and only good at grades, of course he'd be jealous of me, the best of us all. He confronts the boy behind the school as if the jury had already found him guilty, pushing him against the wall and pressuring him to confess. There is no critical thought occurring in his mind anymore. He's found an outlet for his loss of popularity. There is no reason to hear him out. But this just incriminates Yuichi more, as a picture of him is taken attacking Shogo, distributed throughout his class through instant message. Yet who covers for him but Shogo? Insisting someone is attempting to defame Yuichi, claiming the photo is not real, instead of being thankful for the boy he just assaulted defending him. This, for reasons only explained by paranoia, causes Yuichi to further believe Shogo is out to get him. He becomes tormented by the idea as the bullying worsens, and no one attends his birthday, left alone with only his mother and his tutor. He begins to reject parts of his identity, symbolized by tossing his skates. Yet despite changing his outer persona, he's still the kid who was Shonen Bat to his classmates. He is incapable of breaking the stranglehold the rumor has on their minds. Despite the animosity Yuichi has for him, Shogo actively tries to extend an olive branch and befriend the boy. He sympathizes with his situation, having transferred to his school after facing countless months of bullying at his last one for his weight. While this moment could have been the beginning of a friendship and shared resolve to end his social exile, Yuichi continues to perpetuate the idea Shogo was toying with him, his dislike quickly turning to deep hate as he fantasizes about the kid being attacked by Shonen Bat. He thinks to himself, if only Shonen Bat attacked Shogo, then he would be liberated, freed from suspicion. Yet the attack really does occur, and Yuichi is the only one at the scene. He attempts to chase after Shonen Bat with a smile on his face. If he can catch the culprit, he can be free, yet he cannot arrest what may or may not be real. Shonen Bat disappears. Shogo was left critically injured. Yuichi, the only one present at the crime. It quickly sets in that because he was there, his classmates will only double down on suspicion. So Yuichi refuses to go to school, rage building in his stomach as he loses control of his mind. Society has pushed him over the edge by so quickly relinquishing his status as a class favorite, leaving him as a suspected criminal. He longs for any escape from this situation, feeling cornered by society. If only he was a victim of Shonen Bat, then they'd have to free him of this rumor. Thus, as his psychosis worsens and his world begins to teeter on the edge of reality, the boy is visited by his savior, who will free him from his social prison. Yuichi is attacked by Shonen Bat. A As we sink deeper into the narrative, the question of if shonen bad is real or not continues to plague our thoughts. Each story we witness of members of society outcasted from its fabric slowly allows us to piece together what exactly is haunting this town. Each story connected by one shared string, the longing to escape reality, to become a victim and be freed of society's expectations, to perform, to act, to be. Yuichi's tutor, Harumi Chono, is our next case study, a woman who suffers from a personality split, likely caused by the expectation of women in Japanese society. There is this stigma that women are expected to be quiet, modest, and perfect, a role model to others, something Harumi adorns with very little personality. She comes off as rather too perfect, as if she is forcing this idealized version on herself, which likely at some point led to the split we see, the creation of Pariah, a rejection of everything Japanese society pushes for. She is free from expectations, loud, materialistic, and sex-driven. She's unapologetically everything Harumi is not. This persona comes out at night, almost like a way for her to blow off steam from the mask she wears during the day. Harumi does seek help for her dissociative identity disorder, and slowly Pariah is disappearing. But she'll never be fully gone until Harumi can accept what Pariah represents in her greater persona. There's a reason for Pariah's rebellious nature. It's a piece of who she is she tries to repress. But when Harumi's coworker wishes to marry her, she becomes desperate to speed up the process. And rather than slowly accepting what Pariah stands for, she rejects everything she is. It could be the pressure to be a perfect wife, just as she plays the role of a perfect woman in society. It made her panic, further increasing the need for Pariah to exist and liberate her from this stress. But this relationship, while I describe it as mutualistic, both benefiting in some way from the other, quickly becomes more chaotic. Pariah begins acting out in response to Harumi's attempts to force her disappearance. Things only continue to worsen as the wedding approaches, everything coming to a culmination upon hearing from a recovering Yuichi about Shonen Bat, freeing him of his woes. He remarks the attack as if it was a liberation from God, and the seed has been sown in Harumi's mind that all she needs is to become a victim. Her repression of her true identity isn't the reason behind the continued DID. It's something a quick swing of a bat from an attacker can rid from her life. So on that night, the tug of war for her mind reaches its peak, Harumi fighting against Pariah for control, the entire event spilling out onto the street. From her point of view, it's as if the two are in a grappling match, but to any other person, she looks like a psychopath caked in clown makeup. She is mentally not okay, but still she believes there is someone who can fix that. A boy on golden inline skates that will act as a band-aid, a temporary solution. That boy is Shonen Bat. He saved her student. Now he will save her. The law of causality states all these attacks relating to Shonen Bat must be connected. But the difficulty lies in the idea not applying in the way one would expect. The detectives look for a cause and effect relationship that ties all the victims to an assailant. But this case is more psychological than criminal. The victims are barely related. The attacks feel sporadic and uncalculated, but we know they all relate on mental instability and hysteria. This next tale is no different. Masami Hirukawa, a self-proclaimed family man, who's given his life and every dollar to build a dream home for his wife and daughter to live in. A cop who proclaims he carries a sense of duty to justice, all while selling information and squeezing money and sex out of a local prostitution ring Pariah was a part of. This is a family man who cheats, blackmails, and rarely goes home sober. His adventurous lifestyle inevitably catches up to him after the ring leaders grow tired of his antics. They send in bigger fish to squeeze him for return payments on a memo of a gift for Pariah's soon-to-be marriage. Given he threw all the money he squeezed out of the ring into the house he's building, Masami resorts to theft to pay them back. It gets to the point that, under the influence of a drug the ring's men gave to him to help the man forget his reason, he resorts to an impulsive primal state, stealing the life savings of a couple, and leaving us with one of the most disturbing realities we've come across in this anime. When their young daughter returns home, Masami throws himself at her, telling her to call him daddy. It's something he's remarked to the prostitutes he's hired, leaving us with a terrible suspicion he has fetishized his own daughter. Such is the hypocrisy of his character, a cop who claims to uphold justice, yet actively steals from the citizens he protects. A family man who will do anything for them, yet actively cheats and even exploits his child. There are no redeeming qualities in this man. He actively chooses to think of himself as a victim being exploited by the ring he chose to take advantage of first. We watch him read ultra-masculine shonen that inspired post-war boys to become stoic stone walls that save damsels and fight crime. These stories create desire in the man's heart to be more like these heroes. Yet he stands as the antonym to their existence. He is the captor to the damsel and the villain to justice. The shonen hero is everything he's not, and he knows that. He sees it in his friend Detective Keiichi, sees a person actively upholding justice, attempting to find the wrongdoers and bring stability to society. The only issue is, the fact that society values order and separation between the public and private leads to the creation of people like Masami, existing in an environment favorable for his exploitation. The collective consciousness of Japanese citizens enforces societal expectations more on a surface level. You're expected to fulfill the role of a model citizen. They don't spend much time worried about cultivating personal morals. Thus, there are those who carry a blackened heart under an idealized persona. The truth of a person can be hidden behind a facade. Masami's true self is hidden under his role as an officer of justice. He had successfully adapted to the pressure of Japanese society to fit in as a superficial role model, but internally, he is anything but. Such is his infatuation with shonen heroes. At the end of the day, while he is a slimeball, Masami is completely aware of this reality. Yet he only feels guilt when caught, just as he does now, blackmailed by the Yakuza, forced to commit crimes both of his own volition and the prostitution rings. He sinks to his knees, begging for someone to stop him, yet again acting as if he's the victim and committing these crimes when he can just choose to stop himself. His pleas are answered by the shonen bat, but instead of receiving his divine deliverance, he rejects it, putting on this mask cosplaying as a macho hero, monologuing about justice as he attacks the shonen bat. The irony in the air is so thick you could cut it with a knife. But the matter stands, Masami captured the shonen bat, an act he's praised for on a national level. The man who privately deviates from what is socially acceptable stays in a position of power, learning nothing from his act of crime. He's bound to harm others once again. His character a warning of the moral cost of repressing desire and the dangerous consequences that can arise when social norms become more important than genuine ethical behavior. Masami represents the grotesque end of unchecked duality, where the mask of societal virtue rots from within, revealing how conformity, without introspection, breeds corruption. Makoto Koza seems to fit the narrative of the mystery street assailant. Red hat, 3 pins, golden skates, shoes, bent bat. It's almost too perfect of a match that it comes off as artificial, as if he desperately wanted to portray the attacker to the very T. What more, he talks of his deeds as if in a game, his attacks part of a quest as a holy knight to kill the evil force known as Goma. It becomes clear very quickly. This boy suffers from a type of chunibyo syndrome, a term for the escapism and insecurity Makoto is dealing with. His desire to become an adventurer on some great quest is textbook for a young lad failing to fit in, resulting in an escape into fantasy. He has put himself in a powerful role as a knight to escape the powerlessness in reality. He labels his victims as possessed villagers, speaks of his bat as the sword of justice, obtains prophecies from a wise old man who's currently hospitalized in town. Whether this boy is the true assailant or not, it's obvious he feels disillusioned with the harsh realities of society. His fantasy world is a coping mechanism, a place more livable than the real one, where he's likely neglected, misunderstood, and led adrift. The idea of shonen bat offers him more structure and validation than his actual life. His characterization directly critiques otaku escapism, not in mocking him or labeling him a loser, but by suggesting that in a society like Japan's, where emotional repression, high expectations, and conformity reign, immersive fantasy becomes a lifeline for those who don't or can't fit in. Why else would he want to be a street attacker? Makoto states that the old man prophet had told him the homeless old lady is said to have the truth behind the evil force Goma that he hunts. Meeting her, the detectives are faced with the knowledge that their case is much more complex than initially thought. The old lady had seen the first attack, the one witness to Sakiko's incident, remarking that the girl had hit her own leg with a pipe. A truth that goes hand in hand with the belief she wished to be a victim to escape the responsibility and pressure she was under at work. The attack a perfect excuse for not delivering. They take this information back to their interrogation, pressing Makoto to explain the one attack he hasn't. The one on Tsukiko. Keiichi's pressure causes the boy to break, admitting the truth, that he had not attacked Tsukiko. But more interestingly, he had not attacked Shogo, Yuichi, nor Harumi. The only two he had were Akio and Masami. He explains he had wanted to become something more. His delusions self-generated. No one told him to become Shonen Bat, to attack others. But this role offered release similar to that the victim's seat, an escape from the painful reality of life. Makoto Koza is an embodiment of what happens when a society fails to care for its misfits. He's not just a copycat criminal. He's a product of a culture that prizes conformity over understanding, leaving those like him to invent alternate realities to survive. His story is a quiet tragedy, masked in fantasy garb, a warning that when myths are more nurturing than reality, the real world becomes unlivable. And that's where people like Makoto are born, not out of malice, but out of a desperate need to matter. He's both a victim and a perpetrator. There's no need to try and label him as one over the other. But more confusing than his reasoning are the handful of cases that now have no current assailant. We know Tsukiko's case is fraud. She committed the act herself. But what about Shogo and Yuichi and Harumi? The answer is quite simple for us, as we saw the mental downturn of their stories. It's likely Yuichi's fantasization of Shonen Bat attacking Shogo was he himself committing the act, followed by his extreme paranoia, giving birth yet again to the mythical assailant, resulting in him, like Tsukiko, attacking himself to escape the social pressure at school. Given Harumi's condition, it wouldn't be all that surprising if she too concocted the persona of Shonen Bat, blaming an attack she inflicted on herself to be the result of the famed attacker. This would wrap everything we experienced thus far into a nice neat bow. Mentally unstable individuals who feel trapped by society, creating their own monsters in the closet that attack them, earning them a temporary escape from their own internal problems. Problems that go unsolved, but just prevented momentarily from boiling over. An issue arises, however, moving forward, as the paranoia over the assailant roots itself deeper into the collective consciousness of Musashino City. The legend of Shonen Bat becoming much more paranormal. We can still lean on my idea of mentally unstable people imagining their attacker, but another option presents itself. A dark force, like Makoto's Goma, has actually latched itself onto the city. We will look at each attack going forward under the lens of both these possibilities. Progress in understanding the case has been made. Makoto is a copycat responsible for 2 of the attacks. The other 4 were results of extreme psychosis, and the 7th begins to bridge the gap between reality and fantasy. A typhoon closes in on Tokyo Bay. The citizens take this as an ill omen for Shonen Bat, his legend wiggling its way into the scapegoat for all problems both natural and social. Our focus falls upon a runaway, Taiko Hirukawa, the daughter of the crooked cop we were all too familiar with. Having accidentally found footage from the hidden camera her father installed in her room, Taiko became so disgusted she chose to flee the newly built property her father sold his soul for. She had been a daddy's girl growing up, incredibly fond of her father, appreciative of all his hard work. She only wished for her family to be happy, never needing this new home, but her father wished to provide the very best for his daughter. She was beyond grateful. It's too bad, however, her father's mask has been shattered, and now she has a good look at the hideous weasel he truly is. In Japanese society, where shame, obligation, and saving face often dominate interpersonal and family dynamics, where is her escape? How can she find healing when the expectation is for her to continue living under the same roof, expected to forget her father's misdeeds? The answer was thought to be death, but seeing the old lady drowning wards her off from jumping in the waters. Cornered by society with nowhere left to go, her problem is passed off to society's self-created scapegoat, Shonen Bat. Expected to do something so difficult as forgetting your father is a predator, whose eyes have been set upon you. She turns to the assailant as a savior, a symbolic cry for liberation from a life scripted around silent suffering. He attacks her at the peak of the typhoon, erasing her memories with amnesia, leaving her a smiling shell of what she once was. Her father is broken by this, his daughter no longer remembering who he was, for better and for worse. His little girl is gone. What remains is nothing but a hollowed body. Taiko's reliance on Shonen Bat to erase her trauma is a metaphor for how modern society, especially Japan, treats emotional pain not with healing, but with forgetting. Her story is not about weakness. It's about the crushing impossibility of confronting betrayal in a system that values image over truth. And so she turns to myth, because in a world where reality is unbearable, fantasy offers the only form of mercy. She could have inflicted the head wound herself, or the paranormal vessel of victimhood that is Shonen Bat could have paid a visit. We cannot be too sure. But that isn't the only Shonen Bat related incident to occur on this day. In tandem with the attack on her was the interrogation of Tsukiko, the detectives pressuring her to confess that Shonen Bat was not real. But their investigation takes another unexpected turn as her head whips to the side as if being slugged by a bat when under duress. She once more escapes responsibility through victimhood. They've lost a needed confession. They have a fraud Shonen Bat imprisoned, and they received yet another possible attack despite his capture. Mass hysteria continues to build around the mystic street attacker that wears golden inline skates. It seems the pressure from the insanity of the case has brought forth delusion in the young detective's mind, while Keiichi continues to attempt to approach the case rationally, getting frustrated when nothing adds up. Mitsuhiro Maniwa welcomes mysticism into his approach, losing himself slowly to the fantasy. His obsession with frequencies on radios becomes a symbol of the breakdown of logic, the collapse of traditional investigative methods, and a desperate attempt to find meaning in the noise of the city's consciousness. In a society where people lie, repress, and distort reality, radio waves become a metaphor for the unseen truth, something real and constant beneath the static of human denial. Radio waves stand as a perfect parallel to the collective consciousness that we're led to believe Maniwa is tuning into. To fight such a being that doesn't exist, one must enter the world of fiction. In Japanese culture and Jungian archetypes, the mad prophet is often someone who sees deeper truth at the cost of sanity. He will become just that, though for now, he is not fully sunken into his role. He calls Keiichi back to the station after the frequencies tell him something, alerting him of a cornered prey, primed to be taken by Shonen Bat. They make their way into the holding cell of Makoto, only to find the boy too late. Opening the door, they're greeted by the mystical existence of the attacker, bat bloodied, the boy disappearing through the wall. Turning around, they find the body of Makoto. Whether this was suicide or the collective consciousness becoming a physical form is up for you to decide. Regardless, their suspect is dead, killed by a ghost of public delusion. They are dismissed for negligence in keeping the boy alive. The police force closing the case, using Makoto as their scapegoat for all the attacks committed, paying no mind to his testimony, and the evidence Tsukiko made the attacker up. They've chosen social harmony over truth. It's a decision they will pay for in time. Both Keiichi and Maniwa lose their positions, forced to resign from working as investigators. Where can they go from here? Have they been cornered by society with no escape latches left? Tossed aside for one simple mistake that they aren't fully responsible for? Japan loves their scapegoats, loves to divert blame and maintain a surface layer that claims everything is in order, but their harmony is reached through the sacrifice of individuals. The reality is their collective identity leads to collective denial. It's a cultural survival mechanism, rooted in deep-seated fears of shame, disruption, and standing out. But is this blame game justified as a coping mechanism, or is it a form of societal cowardice? Drifting from our story's norm is the suicide pact between three unique individuals, Fuyubachi, Zebra, and Kamune, each at different points of their life, driven to death by different facets of emotional alienation. Fuyubachi likely from the loss of a child in his life, losing purpose and drive to continue through a cruel world. Zebra likely dissociated from society, a misfit failing to find a way to fit in. Kamune likely from an abusive or neglectful household, longing for an escape from the torment. The three met on a suicide pact message board, something too common in the early 2000s in Japan. Ironically, their attempts to die come off as slapstick humor, but to the tune of a very enthusiastic tuba. It's quite unsettling of an episode, but even more perplexing is the reality that these three are already dead. They do not cast shadows upon the ground. People pay them no mind. That is, unless they catch a glimpse of their orbs in a photo. This theory also explains why, after the salaryman jumped in front of the train, Fuyubachi watched him crawl back onto the platform. But a question arises. What the hell does this trio represent? What is Satoshi Kon trying to comment on about Japanese society? The answer to this is, the Three Musketeers don't realize that they are already dead. This symbolic of their emotional detachment, a metaphor for being already dead inside, before the body ever follows. These characters are so numbed by alienation, they can no longer even recognize their own death. Their actions become habitual, repeating the desire to die, even though the moment has already passed. It's a representation of the idea they've been dead inside since long ago. Society just didn't notice. Just like all the characters in Paranoia Agent, they are trapped in a loop of avoidance. Instead of addressing their trauma, they use death as a way out, much like everyone uses Shonen Bat. Even the trio speak of Shonen Bat like a savior who will take their pain away. Kon has always been influenced by Buddhism, so it's no surprise their extended stay on Earth resembles the concept of Bardo, a transition state between death and rebirth. Souls who died with unfinished business, regret, or delusion may become trapped here. This group could have any number of the three. So we're left to wonder, what kind of society creates people who want to die so badly they even try after they're already dead? The answer is one that suffers from isolation, loneliness, and a fear of failures, pressures, and shame. Will their society address the root of these systematic problems? Or will they find yet another scapegoat to blame for the chosen deaths of the young and the old? I may have said it too much already, but paranoia is viral in nature. It distorts truth through collective imagination, warps it for personal benefit, and that comes clear through the gossip circle of housewives as each of their tales of the Shonen Bat become more and more erratic as the episode drags on. Each story becomes more ridiculous, surreal, and detached from reality until they just begin passing urban legends and fabricated fantasies as facts. Why do they do this? The easiest answer is each of them feel unfulfilled, emotionally and socially neglected, to where they long to gather in this circle with people they make clear they aren't necessarily fond of, just to talk about the lives of others, because their own is far too boring and redundant. Gossip gives them a sense of importance in an otherwise meaningless existence. It gives them a sense of power over the collective beliefs of their community, and is their own personal escape from reality into the fantasy. What stories they tell are more lies than truth. In Japanese society, indirect communication is often favored over confrontation. We saw that with how they expressed their dislike for this new fourth wife, and we see it in how they spread rumors around their neighbors they don't like as well. This could be out of envy or jealousy, unsatisfied themselves, partly due to the rejection of the traditional social expectation of women to become housewives. Gossip could be their coping mechanism and tool to maintain relevance in a society obsessed with image and shame. But hearsay becomes fuel for Shonen Bat to become stronger within the collective. It isn't even necessary for him to attack the cornered anymore. The idea of him is so deeply layered into society. At this point, his myth expands through the exchange of lies, which further exaggerates both his characteristics and his deeds. To some, he's killed thousands. To others, he's the size of an elephant with the strength of King Kong. He's become something more than the boy with a bent bat and golden skates. He's now fully merged with the idea he represents, the psychological escape from personal accountability. Saruta is bad at his job. Not just bad, but to the level where he actively harms production of the Marumi anime. His heart is in the right place. He wants to make this project a success. He loves the anime industry, but he's just not cut out to work in it. What makes it frustrating is he does not realize, nor does he take responsibility for his incompetence. Rather, he shields himself from fault with delusion, blaming others, blaming the wind. If he's late, it's traffic's fault. If he doesn't remember to alert people of deadlines, he swears he did it. If he ruins someone's work, they should have been more careful. This creates a very charged work environment as his boss begins boiling over, infuriated by his lack of responsibility. But there is no getting through to Saruta. He's far too obsessed with playing victim. His ignorance is just another item that makes him one. The issue is no one has the time nor patience in the office to sort him out. That's something he must do, alas he is incapable of doing such a thing. So instead they use him as a dartboard, treating him as lesser, demonizing his every action. They don't have the time for his antics as they are grossly behind in production. Thus this stress gets taken out on him. especially by his boss. Nobody likes him, and we can understand why, even if ostracization is not the proper answer to this problem. The animation studio is a pressure cooker. Deadlines, overtime, and egos swirl into a storm of passive-aggressive frustration. Rather than team collaboration, there's blame, cold avoidance, and scapegoating. When things go wrong, it's always his fault. But paradoxically, he never acknowledges this reality. So both he and his co-workers perpetuate the same toxic loop. Saruta and colleagues share equal responsibility for the state of their environment. Sadly, neither are prepared to believe this. And so, Shonen Bat finds them, cornered and seeking an out from the extreme stress of their situation. Various members of the team either turn up dead or injured, but no one really cares about their condition. Rather, their focus falls on how this will affect production. As the quote goes, that's showbiz. Satoshi Kon uses this mentality to expose the inhuman detachment and cold pragmatism that underpins creative industries, especially in Japan's notorious anime production world, where deadlines and deliverables take priority over individual well-being. The irony is that they're breaking themselves to produce Madomi, a symbol of comfort, cuteness, and safety, while internally they're collapsing. It's a metaphor for how consumer media sells peace and joy, while those who create it are often suffering in silence. This all comes to a climax as people appear dead in the office, their boss simply picking the final cut off their corpse, disinterested in their state. But he pays for his dehumanization of his workers. Saruta is the one who swings the bat and kills his boss, having mentally lost himself after being fired for his ineptness. Had this been handled better by his boss, who resorted to insults and aggression rather than calmly explaining this is just not the job for him, things could have turned out differently. It took countless lives for the final cut to be created, a metaphor for the harsh conditions of the real anime industry. And at the end of this road littered with corpses of casualties, the product still must be delivered. Saruta becomes cornered by Shonen Bat as he drives the final cut to the station, eventually facing the music, crashing his car, and lying in a pool of his own blood. The station workers treat his death the same as the rest of the cogs in the creative wheel, picking the final cut from his lifeless hands, and rushing inside to add it into the channel's time slot. The tragedy of Saruta isn't just that he couldn't do his job, it's that he couldn't be honest with himself, and no one around him knew how to help. Something about the entertainment industry needs to change, though there's a possibility it never will. The rumors of Shonen Bat have created a grander monster than the young boy he used to be. He's cornered Keiichi's wife, a woman due to frail health has always been in and out of the hospital, and given their poor financial status, blames herself for their situation given the amount they spend on treatments. Despite this, she does not look for escapes from reality. She stands firm and fights what's real. Shonen Bat has come to her in a time of weakness, but as he stands before her now, she lectures the ghost of collective escapism about what it means to be resilient. She does not plan to go gently into that good night. She may not rage against the dying of the light in a traditional sense, but more in a calm, unwavering form of resistance, one that in many ways is more powerful than anger. She demands control over the relationship, their conversation, when normally our characters have blindly accepted Shonen Bat's presence. They may act like they are the victim, but the reality is, they are the ones who called him. They are the reason he is here. They long for the temporary solution, yet their problems always return. Harumi never overcame her DID. Taiko never confronted the truth of her father. But unlike the others, Misai has always faced the reality of her condition, thanks to her husband's support. He had rejected her statement that it would be better if she was dead, Keiichi stating that she is only trying to escape reality, and that together they can face the truth, even if it hurts, because they have one another. While that moment may ring out as emotionally intelligent on Keiichi's part, he suffers from a very common fault of the Japanese older generation: extreme devotion to work and emotional repression. Keiichi is a classic symbol of traditional Japanese masculinity: stern, stubborn, emotionally repressed, and deeply invested in law, order, and routine. As the world becomes stranger and more chaotic, spiraling into surrealism, he refuses to adapt. His idealized view of justice and his role as a protector becomes increasingly obsolete. He's painfully aware he no longer fits into society, reminiscing at his new job working security after being fired, with an old convict he had caught years ago. The old man had committed petty theft, all while wearing the comically traditional thief outfit of Japan. Keiichi remarks how satisfying the case was as it felt black and white, like he remembered justice being. Crime today is wrapped in layers upon layers of nuance and emotion. Motivations and cases aren't as cut and dry. He longs for the simpler days of post-war Japan, where there was a collective desire to rebuild and create balance and order. Yet post-war Japan was never as morally pure or simple as he remembers. His longing isn't for reality, but a romanticized myth, a fantasy no different from the delusions others in the series fall to. It's the memories of his childhood dipped into nostalgia. His clinging to this past is just as dangerous as the fantasy our victims escape into. When Keiichi enters his own delusions, the retreat into the two-dimensional noir world where problems have clear answers and men like him still matter, he's performing the same escapist faults he told his wife to reject. Conversely, his partner, Maniwa, has taken a different route from Keiichi by surrendering to the absurd nature of modern-day society for the sake of solving the shonen bat case. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. Yet in this case, Rome has gone mad, thus so should you. To understand the nature of shonen bat, Maniwa must loosen his grip on himself. He becomes Radar Man, fighting the beast in the pseudo-reality Shonen Bat exists in. He, alongside Misei, correctly realized that Shonen Bat is just another form of what Madomi represents, of what kawaii culture represents. Escapism, rejection of accountability. Things all too common in this age. Never before have billions of people been so plugged into each other's thoughts, fears, and emotions in real time. Information moves faster than our biology or institutions can adapt, creating paranoia, but also new consciousness. Japan is facing the same problems as the entire world. Their society is drastically changing faster than the change can be accepted. Traditional anchors, religion, nationalism, capitalism, the nuclear family, are all under pressure. Many people feel unmoored, caught between the death of the old and uncertainty of the new. The East and West are beginning to once more rebalance. We're witnessing a slow reorientation of thought and power, with Eastern philosophies and alternative value systems starting to get more attention in the face of Western burnout. This anime may have been made 20 years ago, but the narrative still applies to modern day as the world becomes more intertwined. We're between stories, between worlds, between roles. It's scary, unstable, and uncomfortable, but also full of potential. We either accept the insanity or become lost in the waves it creates. Maniwa has learned by sorting through the frequencies, the motivation of Tsukiko's ghost story, the reason she created the idea of Shonen Bat, tracing this all back to the case Keiichi was trying to remember from 10 years prior. By speaking with her father, he learns that she had lost grip on her puppy's leash, resulting in him running into traffic and dying, rather than burdening the responsibility for this incident, regardless if it was intentional or not. She instead decided to play victim and act as if she was attacked by an assailant, a cover story for why her dog died. Her fear of blame and imperfection led her to spin this delusional narrative, yet one could argue she is just a product of the system. Japan's societal framework demands perfection and duty, especially from children who are expected to perform and behave impeccably. Society demands a valid excuse for this fuck-up, so she's constructed her own. Her father, seeing the effect of his harsh parenting that upheld these ideals, in shame of his own failings to be a nurturing figure that resulted in her feeling cornered, decided to go along with his daughter's delusions, stating that he will one day find the assailant and attack him with his own bat, though he knows the boy will never be found. A decade later, in another incident where Tsukiko needed a scapegoat for her personal responsibilities, and we have the most insane paranormal manifestation of victimhood, as well as one of comfort. Madomi stands adjacent to Shonen Bat, assuring Tsukiko that nothing is her fault, continuing to hold her back from true growth as a person that comes from burdening the weight of your own faults and failures. This dodging results in the death of her own boss once he feels cornered after dropping his mask and berating Tsukiko for playing a victim and silently failing to deliver in the office. He is both wrong yet justified in his crash out. Tsukiko must learn to be vocal about what is possible for her, rather than attempting to avoid that conflict by all means possible, as it gives people the perception that she believes she is above them, though that is their own paranoia and inferiority spinning that complex. Regardless, Shonen Bat delivers momentary relief, from the man's stress, with permanent death. Madomi pressures Tsukiko to once more run from her demons, this time it being the actual root of all her excuses and woes. While Maniwa attempts to fight off the beast as Radar Man, and Keiichi's wife begins to fall into death's hands. Everything comes to a culmination as we enter the climax of Musashino City's mass hysteria, when their kawaii and comfort character disappears, Madomi exclaiming he will only protect Tsukiko, transporting her into the 2D noir Keiichi resides in, free from the harsh reality they both fear. The town loses their minds. The collected delusion of shonen bat, a visceral manifestation of societal lies and evasion, becomes physical ooze, no longer contained in the subconscious. Truth and reality are defined by the collective. Thus, if that line between lie and fact can no longer exist, fantasy begins to bleed out into reality. The world begins to unravel. Keiichi and Tsukiko become mentally lost within the 2D dreamland. Both represent for each other something they long for. Keiichi, the child he never got to have, and Tsukiko, a father she wishes was more involved in her life. But there are those outside this fantasy that attempt to wake Keiichi from this place. Maniwa's attempts become futile, but Misai's are hard to ignore. They wake Keiichi to the truth he's hidden from, that feeling he's failed his wife, failed to protect her from illness. When he was faced with something so inevitable and unfair, his morals and structure collapsed. All he could have done was be there emotionally for her. That was something his generation struggles to comprehend. He hides his feelings behind work and more work. He avoided returning home out of the shame that he's helpless to protect or provide, and therefore feels as if he's useless. It's not that he doesn't love Misai, it's that he fails to understand what he can do best for her. He believes more money for more treatments is the only thing he can accomplish, when really Misai only wishes for his affection and attention, for her love to return to their home. But that never comes to fruition. His obsession with his manhood resulted in an escape into nostalgia, to a time he believed had clear right and wrong. But that nostalgia trip cost him the most vital moment in the rest of his life, being by his wife's side at her death. Misai will not live for much longer. Thus her spirit visits her husband and his delusions, pressing him to wake up and face reality. He missed his window to spend the final moments with a dying light. He turned his back to it, afraid of its shriveling glow, and that's a tragedy, a reality he must live with. In respect for his wife's unbending will to accept reality and fight its cruelty, he too regains the spirit needed to reject this world of comfort, shattering the veil holding them here. Returning to reality, Maniwa confronts Tsukiko on her lie of being attacked both this current year and the decade prior, pushing for her to admit fault and take responsibility for her own mistakes. Yet an issue arises. This only makes her feel more cornered, summoning the collective will that Shonen Bat has become. Maniwa attempts to fight off the monster, only to be swatted aside like a fly. The little mascot is the only entity strong enough to counter its strength, colliding in the air, combining with its twin. Madomi presses Tsukiko to yet again run away from the problem she created, but she realizes now that the only true solution is for her to face reality. The lies only pile high, but truth can set them free. So she confronts her past self, urging the little girl to no longer play victim. She cradles both her deceased puppy and her responsibility in her arms. With Tsukiko admitting that Shonen Bat is fictitious, he no longer has the power that the people have given him. With the foundation of the collective delusion collapsing, Musashino's citizens are released from their mental prisons, whether they wish to be or not. They must learn to accept reality, just as Tsukiko has now. Tokyo is free to decide its own future, finding itself in ruins similar to the end of World War II. They can rebuild it into something better, but there is the possibility that they may just choose to create more of the same. Despite the lessons we believe the city learned, it becomes the exact same society we started off with. The same busy commotion of salarymen on their way to work. The same clamoring noise of excuses being made instead of proposals to solve problems boils higher and hotter, like the heat colliding against the blacktop. It's not so easy for a social group to change, especially one like Japan's that values stability and tradition over a new wave. They were comfortable before, and so they will return to that comfort, even if it is a delusion they sell to themselves. You may have thought they woke up, but the reality is they've only fallen into a deeper sleep. The journalist still loads around, searching for anything scandalous to pay the bills. Maniwa takes the place of the Jungian mad wizard archetype, one who traded his sanity for knowledge of the unconscious collective. Kawaii culture has returned, replacing Maromi with the next big thing, a cat mascot. It's all too likely this thing is yet another comfort character for the population to become lost in. A girl like Tsukiko is seen looking up at the cat, and we can only assume that the narrative will start yet again, with characters new and old filling new roles, as mass hysteria once again begins its phases. But there is hope that one day society will escape these cycles, because Keiichi lives on as a representation that we can accept reality, reject escaping into delusions and fantasy, so we don't miss what is important here in front of us. In the end though, Paranoia Agent doesn't ask if society can change. It dares to suggest it won't, because in a world built on performance, the lie is easier to live with than the truth. But even in that world, where illusion feels safer than reality, someone like Keiichi still chooses to face it, proving that while society may resist change, the individual doesn't have to. You can choose to accept it all.